selection. So here we are. Game number 4, TSM has side selection. Yes, I did change to the correct screen. Didn't fail you guys on that one. So, very interesting turning point in this series. Now, of course, it's still, 2 match points for Cloud9 and closing it out. But TSM finally picked up a victory. And how they approach the game 4 draft is going to be interesting. I wasn't a big fan of the draft we saw on blue side on red side from C9. I thought the Zillion Cinderhulk Jarvan was a bit disconnected. I thought the GP into the lanes that was showing were a kind of strange decision as well. But on blue side, C9 get to square up the draft again. And remember, we've noticed they're banning Lissandra, Aurelia, Akali on blue side every time out. They're banning Lissandra, Aurelia, blue and red side, and Akali is a champion that they are banning on blue side when they feel like they can get away with it. So that's the approach that Cloud9's taking to this. It's very reminiscent of them having to ban Aurelia Akali during all of Worlds. They couldn't play the Flex Assassins, which ended up being their demise. So let's look at what the final ban is from TSM. So far, this has been their strategy when they have been on red side in game 2 and 4. They have to ban the Taric, as we know. They banned the Tahm Kench. Now, this is something that C9's been willing to first pick. So they ban a first pick champion here. That's double support ban against Zeyzal. So what we think about what's left open, a lot of teams would take Ryze, but C9 hasn't shown Ryze priority. So they're not taking Ryze. In Korea, there would be Kalista. But Kalista's shown almost no priority in this series as well. With Tahm Kench gone, Rek'Sai is like the obvious take when it comes to a first pick champion. It doesn't show anything as a champion with very strong priority in the early game. You would assume Rek'Sai first pick here more often than not. But they're going to take Jarvan, which to me is the like 45 side of the 55-45 matchup against Rek'Sai, but has identifiable strengths. So I'm not a huge fan of it. I think you take Ryze every day of the week at this pick or Rek'Sai, but Jarvan doesn't tell me anything until I know what comes with it. So I think on red side here, there's a lot of ways you could go. We'll see what TSM want to reveal. Galio Rek'Sai is power duo. The lack of Ryze priority is so weird in North America. So Ryze Galio, we think we know bot lane for Smoothie. Smoothie's had 2 bans against him, so... Smoothie's put in 2 jungle bans. So the pool of supports is starting to go for when it comes to first round supports. It's a lot of teams would take Vayne into Galio. It's seen as a competition answer. You could take something like Vayne Braum if you wanted to. Lucian Braum's up, and it's going to take Lucian Braum, which is fine. I don't think it's necessarily super good against Galio, but I think it's fine into Galio. So that part is fine. Now, first round solo laner at this pick into double ban is possible. So, for example, Jace is still open after all of this. Now, Jace against Jarvan Braum isn't ideal, but Jace can still find a super hard winning matchup, and you could double ban the Jace lane as well. But they're actually going to hold solo lanes completely. This is a little bit interesting here, because you could just look for a strong laner, a Zoe or a Jace, and start banning things that work decently against it. They just want to take Ezreal, respecting how much lockdown Lucian, Braum, Jarvan provides. Because the worry here is that even Ezreal, that almost any AD carry is at the whim of Lucian, Braum, Jarvan ganks. Like, there's so much pressure on a bot laner that playing a bot lane style with another GP might actually undo them. So with the Morgana's actually going to be banned as a blind pick here. So I guess they're not really respecting Niski having pressure blind picks, but rather kind of negation blind picks. They don't see top lane first round from TSM, and they ban away the Kayle. I understand that. I can understand the Kayle ban for sure. Worried about a last pick. You're more worried about a last pick top laner than a last pick mid laner, because when it comes to blind mid lane choices, there's quite a lot open that you're not too worried about. Zoe, LeBlanc, for example, are both open. So you're much more concerned that Broken Blade previously been first rounding top laners, could have first rounded Jace at any time, and instead they're holding both solo lanes for second round, which suggests they're more locking and loading for a last pick top laner. So that's why I think KO ban is one you're probably recommended to put out. And they ban away the Jace as well. So you would assume Zoe at this pick because the LeBlanc ban is there. And because, like we mentioned, it seems like TSM are loading up for a final pick top laner. So the LeBlanc ban suggests a Zoe pick. The Zoe pick comes in. It doesn't reveal anything. There's not really anything into it unless you want to go super kind of counter meta. Like you can go Kassadin's pretty good against Zoe at a point, but it's very risky early. I think Echo can win the matchup. I've seen it win in pro play. BDD won the matchup, but most people aren't practiced on Echo mid lane. The macro around that. Syndra can be taken into it, but it's been unreliable, I think. So I would assume Niski takes Syndra in this case. But he might, I mean, the Rise priority has been so low here. Now, what happens for a lot of teams in this spot is that you take something like Aurelia Rise. And if you took Aurelia Rise here, and yes, I know Aurelia is banned, but if you take Aurelia Rise as your second round solo lanes, and I was talking about duos of picks, so for example, complete a bot lane or Aurelia Rise in the second round, something that G2 love to do, then you're never 100% clear on the lane assignment, and there's almost no champion in the game who beats Aurelia and Rise. But given that we're expecting Jarvan jungle and Aurelia is a champion that C9 don't seem to play, I don't know if there are two flexible laners that can both lane against the meta pool of top and mid lane, especially after all the nerfs have come in. So because you're banning Lissandra, Akali, Aurelia, to me you lose the power of blue side in the second round where you can just draw flex champions and TSM have to choose some level of bad matchup into two champs. So I'm waiting to see what Licorice is going to blind here. Is he going to blind GP again? I don't think that would be... Okay. So Zed is good into Zoe as well for assassin reasons. So it's Rise blind, Zed against Zoe. Now Zed against Zoe is a good matchup, but it's not a reliable matchup. And also Zed threat onto Ezreal is up and down. Galio is a good support to try to peel away. So I assume this is going to be Cassiopeia top. Cassiopeia actually loses lane super hard against Zed. So if it was Cassio, it would kind of make sense into Rise. They have two different choices. And this is cool to see. We don't see enough Cho'Gath in LCK. This is actually cool. Cho'Gath on TSM's side. Cho'Gath is pretty strong into Rise because you can just eat him. Like Rise doesn't build health in his build anymore. He goes shields. You know, he goes Seraph's Rush, not even Rod of Ages, so... Huh. Interesting. So Zed into Zoe. Good matchup for Zed, but I think Zed can be overrated in these matchups. Like, there are matchups that in solo queue, Zed always seems to win hard, but in pro play, just like the fact that people were liking Zoe versus LeBlanc, you feel like Zoe versus Zed should be slightly less forgiving than in that matchup, but not super awful. However, Zoe's weakness is being gap closed on, and obviously Zed can do that really well and can pop damage as well, so interesting. When it comes to 5v5, TSM have a huge advantage because they have a balanced teamfight comp with strong frontline. Like, C9 kind of have to make this game about skirmishing. Like, it has to be Lucian Braum 2v2, or Zed 1-3-1, or Rise 1-3-1, because the frontline here is going to be insanely huge from TSM's side, and from C9's side, it doesn't matter what type of Jarvan it is. It's not enough. Feast wins front-to-back teamfights as well. When we had a tank meta, Cho'Gath was always kind of the the god tier tank, because even with all your health bars, 1,000 true damage to your face, guess what? Your AD carry kills that person faster, the tank dies, and front to back you win. So C9 have to be tricky and rotate around the map and be very good at realm warping into Baron Pit and playing the map in a pretty wide way. And that can be undone if either Zed or Ryze falls behind. If Zed or Ryze falls behind, then this draft does very, very little. But Svenskaren's been really good this series. The early game here is going to be pretty big to watch. Yeah, I had no idea there was a Zed this series, so I really am surprised. I didn't see the champion picks, so had no idea to expect this. Yeah, and you forget the points where it's melee versus range. The first 6 levels, Zoe has a pretty huge lead. A cheeky all-in, you can do a lot of things, but it's flash, it's barrier. That's the most defensive choice you could take in this particular game. But Cho'Gath is that one pick into Ryze, because I was sitting there actually talking to the Korean casters, and I was like, Ryze mid is pretty exploitable. Vel'Koz is really good into it, for example. As other picks to work into it. But Ryze top, I was kind of at my wit's end as to what you pick into Ryze top if it's first picked and you know it's top. And Cho'Gath is one that we eventually came to, but it's a champion that never sees play. I believe we had maybe one Cho'Gath in all of LCK. So it is a good pickup into Ryze, just like it was a good pickup into Vlad back in the day. Damn. Only barrier being used there is pretty big. Nice gank timing from Svenskeren. Like, Zed can work against Zoe. I was reading the thing about Ziggs. It's just, given the player nameplates, how the series had played out previously, it's a pretty bold choice. But if Nisqy says he's feeling it, like, I think you should defer to him, right? Because not like the matchup is bad necessarily. It's just at the pro level, with how Zoe has been trending, I feel like Zoe does better in the matchup than most people give her credit. This is a pretty important moment in the game. Spotted on a ward, but not actually the sweeper not spotting it here, so that's actually pretty big when it comes to baiting this play. Arcadian knows to be there. Good ward there. Bjergsen's warding this game, this series. Pretty good. Man, there's 2 wards on the map, and they're getting the bazinga value on Svenskeren. Like, Svenskeren had the great gank path in mid. He's not even making predictable spots. He's 12 CS in, so you would expect him to fall back into his jungle. But even though he's visiting snowbally lanes that you want to hit early, those wards are getting the maximum value. You could not get more value from 2 wards on the map. It's impossible. Impossible. Like, Bjergsen tanking that gank and not having to blow anything, keeping his flash up, and also getting the better back timing as well. That's about even, but getting even back timing is pretty insane, like with all the work Svenskeren has done. And now the big disadvantage is from the jungle more than anything else. Comet Cho'Gath is the most lane presence. It's for W trades, E trades, for keeping competitive in health, and it also gives the most burst range. And Rek'Sai and Cho'Gath kill Ryze really, really easily. You don't think of Cho'Gath Ryze as a god tier 2v2, but it actually is. If the Unburrow hits and Cho'Gath has all his spell up, or if the Rupture hits and then you can come in at the right time as Arcadian, like, you have 100-0 on almost any champion in the game at level 6. Really, really powerful. And the matchup, like we mentioned, is a good one. You can go Mercs. You can't necessarily win the matchup late game, but I think you stand tall against Ryze for so long in the game that it's worth it. Oh, Really good binding there. A really good treble bubble spot there. So TSM have the scaling draft, and C9 know the onus is on them. Svenskeren going for such a strong path after 3 camps lets you know that they're just looking for kills wherever they can get them, because this game goes to almost a unwinnable state outside of Rise somehow finding kill pressure on a 5-6 item Cho. Not enough damage. Oh! Damn. Saved by Cloth Armor. I think he would have died there. He was down to about 80 health. Just natural roam timing from Broken Blade. This is good to see for him. This is really good for his development. Broken Blade for a lot of the spring season reminded me kind of a Nuggery play for lane and lane only kind of player, but I'm loving him trying to spread his lead here. He just roams down on a good pushing and gets the kill. This is a really good play from Broken Blade because he's ahead of the play. Look at when he starts roaming. He starts roaming now. Like, he starts moving out of lane the moment that the Jarvan is spotted on the control ward. He says, all right, I'm coming. A little bit later than that, actually. It takes a half second, but he pushes and roams. And that's actually good to see from the Cho'Gath. He could have just pushed in further, but sees the play happening, gets ahead of it. Good rupture spot. Good commit with the flash. Well played from TSM's top laner. And then now you're feeling the sinking feeling as C9, because now you're winning. Now you're 2v2 Zed Jarvan has actually not been able to get any kills on Zoe. Zoe's gone CS for CS, and actually top lane's found a kill. And the light at the end of the tunnel is really only God tier Rise strength, and I think that's too far away. Nicely played. Nice play by Licorice. Kind of random that. The question mark pings where I guess my camps are up, go check it, and Licorice just has exactly the mana to kill Arcadian. Whoopsie. This is a whoopsie. Nicely played by Licorice. Really good roam timing, like we said. But our thought is, square game, TSM wins more often than not. Svenskeren is putting so much into making ganks happen. I wonder if you go... I wonder if you just go Warrior Jarvan here. I'm trying to think about that, because I feel like if Jarvan gets nothing done, it doesn't matter what items Jarvan has, they lose. The counter argument is that if you EQ in as Warrior Jarvan, you just get feasted for your whole health bar, but I don't know. I think you go Warrior Jarvan here and try and snowball. If you don't snowball this game, you lose. But Cinderhulk is probably the build that he kind of most understands at the moment, and damage ranges and things like that, so you can kind of understand why he went there, but yeah. C9 feels is trying to contest for everything. Trying to pressure mistakes out of TSM. But TSM had that mental reset from winning game number 3. I think they're still kind of paying forward the elation they feel from that particular win. That just means that everywhere Svenskeren goes, he's not getting ganks off. Kane just bursts down Niski. That can't be good. He would have actually got the kill, whether that all hit or not. Oh boy. Well, that means the mid prio is gone, or any dreams of it. means that bot lane, despite being Lucian Braum, is now going to feel the spill-on effects of the enemy mid laner being so far behind. I wonder why you do this. Like, why are you making this play? What is the best case scenario here? Anyone in chat know? Like, why are we making this play? They're 3v4. No one has a low health bar except Smoothie. And the best case scenario is you get an Ocean Drake. Like, you're getting an Ocean Drake and you're dying, right? There's no way you're living through this. So, like, I really don't know why you would walk up there, because it just ends up giving another kill and the Ocean Drake to the enemy team. 2 kills, sorry, my apologies. And you've got the Snowball draft, and I don't feel like getting the Ocean Drake actually qualifies as Snowball, and the opposite of Snowball is what we're going to see from C9 this game, because now they're really, really far behind. This is just chasing the last play from Svenskeren. If it's Infernal, I think it's okay. If the rest of your team completely gets out, yes, maybe. If it's an Infernal and like you throw yourself in there and you're like, well, it's me or Infernal. But for Ocean, I think it's really, really weird from Svenskeren. And he was so good in games 1 and 2 as well. Now, Broken Blade doesn't have all of his items to shrug off Ryze's damage, and they've never actually been able to hit a burst rotation on the Ryze. Oh, they're actually looking... Cho'Gath's looking for this deep one here. Alright. Can they actually get on top of Licorice? They can. No kiting there. Tried to make the creative play around the range of the ultimate. The shallow TP there was a pretty cool one from Broken Blade. Like, not many people come from that angle. It was the least likely to chase him back, and thus they were able to get a lot of advantages there. Now we feel like we're in silly territory, almost like as big a lead as TSM had in game number 3. This is even bigger in game number 4, because the enemy comp doesn't even fight 5v5. They have to play side lanes, and they're losing their side lanes. And like in moments like this is the correct play. Like now Svenskeren's once again EQRing, but top lane is done. Like he can't impact top lane. Zed is going to rotate first, even though he's not that close to the bot lane. Like you have to try and make plays that doesn't get gold in the game, because C9 can only win the game if they get nice early item spikes on Lucian, Zed, Ryze, and hit side lanes. Almost every other game state is pretty much an unassailable lead for TSM, so I don't mind this engage. You know, it's going to always be an outnumber, or you're going to get a kill, maybe more. You're going to take the turret there. And at least Zoe is isolated from this game rather than being able to impact more than Zed, which is a possibility given how the early game went. So 1,700 gold lead. Tempo lead, though, like in terms of like how this game is being played, it's not going to be played around Zed split push because Zed's too far behind. It's not going to be played around Lucian Braum objective control because they've decided to lose map control top side, and that's very likely to spill over to bot side because TSM have a better teleport user in the Cho'Gath as well. And even Drake's like Feast is going to make it such a contestable objective for TSM. So the Cho'Gath pick, you know, I guess TSM Cho'Gath, you usually think of it in the super negative way. You think back to those awkward, 2014 Worlds mid lane AP Cho games. Broken Blade reminding us that Cho'Gath is a champion, which I am appreciative of. It's one you just don't think of very much. Here's how you can't fight as C9. You can't fight TSM in a 5-man position. Zed coming in late. Like, C9 have to come in from different angles and comps with Cho'Gath fight Barons and Elder Dragons and things like that so easily because Cho'Gath can tank it forever, can secure it, and they can turn off the Baron if you counter. If you have a teamfight comp with a lead and a Cho'Gath, you just run at Elder and Baron and wait for the enemy to make a mistake. So someone walks up too far. Of course, it's Svenskeren looking for a steal. Actually pretty well played by C9, all things considered. C9 played that pretty well, given where they were at in terms of the game, and yet TSM comfortably won the team fight. So it shows you the power of composition there rather than actually kind of execution. Because I thought C9's execution after the start, because like they lose their jungler, his whole health bar is gone, and then watch how C9 play this. They actually get a lot of AoE coming in from Niski. Teamfight Zed, not a meme for once. It's actually pretty well played on the back end, all things considered, for C9, and yet they still lose pretty significantly. C9 will never be snuffed out. Something to respect about this team is that they will always try to play aggressive and find a way back into a game. They will not go out quietly. They got 2 Dirks and a Dream onto Zed. And they're just putting down control wards and trying to push up. Now, this is not going to get turrets because they don't actually have the map positioning in order for this to actually be super threatening, and they need to outnumber to get anything in this area. But they're going to try. Like, they're at least creating some false choices for TSM to have to try to rotate against. Zed has been mid lane for so long. Like, in pro games, you almost never see a Zed still mid lane at 20 minutes, but mid lane turrets being up is so awkward for the game. Not too much to comment on for now. Like, we're very much in a lull state, as we talk about, where in the top lane, nothing like Lucian and Braum can be defended if you're willing to commit uneven numbers, but in the bot lane, Liquor's at kill pressure at all moments from the roam over by the Rek'Sai. So Rek'Sai abandons defending top, they lose that turret, they get another kill very easily onto the Cho'Gath. And Cho'Gath now can build Righteous Glory Warmogs and has enough magic resist to mostly ignore the damage coming through from the Rise. So now, if you're TSM, what you want to do is you want to make this game around Baron. You want to get Baron control. You can bait Baron forever because you have a Cho'Gath, and your Baron secure range is, what, 1800 or so? Cho'Gath Feast plus Smite. The Zoe catches people trying to contest Baron super easy, and there's only 2 different ways you can test Baron from blue side. That's why red side is known as the side of the map that defends Baron really well. And that's going to be a multi-step process. Like, they don't feel strong enough to do that just yet, but the moment they can get Baron control, the good options for C9 start to go away. I guess they're just trying to take outer turrets. Easy objectives for now. And C9 just have to invest everything and sneaky pushing up. Trying to get sneaky towards a relevant item point nice and early in the game. It's going to be a pause. Skip through this one. Now, at this pause screen, it's not a disaster for C9, but obviously they picked a draft that wanted to snowball and they're behind in kills and gold. As we know, the kill lead is not unbelievably huge, but you know, it's there. It's a long pause. Jump into the future. Oh, wow, it's an analyst S pause. All right. Let's find a way to jump back in. All right. Long pause. And C9 are actually making the Baron bait here. Something that TSM was going to be wanting to do. You wouldn't even think about the Baron play at the start. They're actually taking a very long time to respond. TSM's probably a few seconds too late on this. So what gives rise to this Baron start? We get back on. We know that C9 has been playing topside. And they just come in and start duoing Baron. Just Jarvan and Lucian. The Realm Warp, of course, another tricky way. We talked about Realm Warping into Baron Pit as a potential win condition, but they're so far behind in terms of tempo, you just don't even think about a play like this happening. They do it, though. So it's pretty cool that they pull the trigger here. Now let's watch Niski's entrance to this fight. Niski's the one waiting. He tries to get onto Sven. You know, he's going in 1v4, so it's very unlikely to make something happen. The problem here is that now TSM get Baron. So at this point here, right, you're actually able to force TSM to react and not get a free Infernal Drake. So far you're like C9. This is a really good Baron attempt. Someone actually in chat asking, do you think the Baron attempt happens because of the pause? I think it's an interesting way to take advantage from the pause, because the pause just takes you out of it, right? You can't have your blood pump in the same way during a pause. So I think making a play that's like, if you have a 20-minute pause, the like brain off play might actually be the best play more often than any other time in the game, because the enemy's not going to be thinking about that kind of ripping up the pages and trying something pretty crazy. So I actually think that's not actually a bad idea when it comes to rolling the dice after a pause. And Niski tries to dive into backline, but without stopwatch, I think that's never going to work. And the problem is that the Baron being leashed at 4,000 health against any other top lane tank, C9's like, whatever, we lost one member, it's fine. But because it's Cho'Gath, and they have Ezreal Zoe over the wall to put damage onto the Baron, it's actually too much damage done. Like, so much about this is the champions involved. It's like the moment that, at this game state, with Sneaky and Licorice both on damage dealers and able to do damage, almost no other champion lineup than Cho'Gath X can finish the Baron. But having two people who can do damage over the wall and a Cho'Gath for secure makes Baron leash to 4340, Baron leash too far. Sven does it over the wall. Svenskeren tries for a steal, but it's out of smite range. It's over 900. TSM problem solved that one really, really well. Like, they were slow to the Baron. I think they should have been there a couple of seconds early. But, yeah. Someone asked, why Braum doesn't turn when Zed goes in. Let's check that. Does Zazel do anything if he turns? I mean, maybe they get a kill. I don't know that. I agree with you that Zazel Niski lack of synergy there is a bit strange. I think two people definitely die. I guess maybe the call was Niski tries to go 1-for-1 and they can peel off the Baron, and they didn't put everything together, with Cho'Gath especially being able to impact it. Should have kept it over 9,000. I mean, there was a, like, this Baron check was late. Like, you're surprised you're still DPSing it at this point. The check comes in with a 6,000. And you want, the call must be that Niski thinks he can get something done. So I don't think they end it too late. Like 4,500 at 22 minutes is pretty insanely high HP value for you to be actually losing the Baron. But given all the extra variable of it being Cho'Gath, you get why it happened. The fact that they could talk to through the pause is relevant. So let's talk about how this all happens. They've just had Ryze killed and then run out a second time in the bot lane. And Infernal Drake is spawning. And you know that TSM wants Infernal because it's Infernal, right? The play you make here is actually a really tricky one by C9. And it's a smart one because your chances of being able to regroup bot lane and take Infernal are 0. You spent all of your game jungling topside and Lucian Braum slowly taking out a turret and then doing damage to inner turret. So think of the future game states against a front-to-back teamfight comp where C9 get the chance to start Baron and then turn. They're very minimal. There's very few futures you can see where C9 can actually punish TSM. TSM are ahead with an easy-to-execute comp. They'll at minimum lose free Infernal very shortly. I actually think starting Baron here is one of the few ways C9 could actually find a meaningful lead in this game. Yes, just like the previous game, TSM could make mistakes, but if we're having high expectations of TSM, this was one of the few ways where TSM was rushed into something. In almost every other game state, when it slows down, TSM is going to take their time and make things happen. But they're rushed here because they understand they were a bit late checking the Baron. Nisqy comes in. I think at least one of the Q parts miss. Like, this could have gone better for C9, and I don't fault them for trying it when they tried it. But it's also something that's going to accelerate their own demise because now they're against Infernal Baron with the comps where they're at. And now that they've lost Baron, Zed doesn't really do anything as a champion. Think about if they get Baron, Zed can do things as a champion, right? Because Zed has minion wave pushing and turret damage. But now he can't really do anything in the side lane or in the group team fight. So you just rush down as either 5 or a 4-1 and you just take free objectives. There's no Metal Gear Solid shenanigans about C9 anymore now that TSM have Baron. Yeah. Nothing spectacular required. They just win the game here. Yeah, C9 got themselves into a really weird spot in draft where they needed to pick that solo lane. You know, I think it feels like a game where going to the draft is more interesting than holding on the previous spot. They first picked the Jarvan, and we were talking about how I didn't really get them much. They got Lucian Braum, so they had a good 2v2 lane. But then, because they're blue side banning Lissandra, Akali, Aurelia, you get to awkward spots like this where, you know, what do you draft against Zoe blind? At the moment they saw this LeBlanc, they know that TSM's going to pick Zoe. And you can't force any lane assignments here. I mean, what could they have picked instead is kind of what we're wondering. Because you have to show your draft at this point. What does Aatrox do against TSM? The problem is if you go Aatrox and Broken Blade goes Fiora, it's a really good Fiora draft because they have very strong 4-1 with Zoe and Ezreal being able to wave clear. And Fiora hard counters Aatrox in the 1v1 from pretty early. So the Aatrox blind that Licorice has been playing a lot doesn't really work. So they have to pick something, right? You have to pick something that beats a lot of champs, and Rise top is pretty good on that side. And you have to pick something that contend with Zoe. And the Zed is definitely the bigger of the two risks. You kind of had to pick your poisons here. I like Nisqy on... Like, this draft could have been Ori Aatrox, right? And I feel like Ori Aatrox here works pretty well. Like, Ori's not great against Zoe. Like, it's not ideal, but you can wave clear with it, and it gives Jarvan and Braum someone to kind of interact with. And then the Aatrox can team fight. Licorice is really good at it. It lanes against a lot of stuff. People are suggesting Vlad. I mean, I think Rise Vlad is okay. I guess Rise mid lane against Zoe and Vlad top lane blind. Like, there's a lot of... I think you probably just end up facing Cho'Gath again if you go Vlad, just like they did with Rise. I don't know. I feel like TSM... The first round Galio Rek'Sai, I think I like a lot more than first pick Jarvan. The Lucian Braum. I think the Ezreal pick here is really good because a lot of what you want to do, like you see Jarvan, Lucian Braum, and you're like, this is three people who want to just pound on a bot laner. You know, Lucian Braum wins most 2v2s, Jarvan's good at turret diving. So the Ezreal pick, I think, is a smart one in the first round. The Zoe feels like a bonus, but I think maybe C9 got into their own heads about Broken Blade not taking a first round top laner like Jace when it was available. Like, if you banned Zoe at the Jace pick and then or just played Poppy into Jace, I don't think your comp's that different. So yeah, they just got themselves into a tricky spot here, I think, C9, where with their triple banning of flex mid top laners and then TSM banning, one mid top laner and two mid laners, C9 as a team, I think, had some pretty awkward decisions to make here in the second round. So I think by the second round, it got into a tricky spot. And then, they went for a riskier draft that just didn't work after the early games. So that's going to be game number 4. The pause obviously would have made it feel longer in real life, but it ended up being a pretty short game to review. I'm going to take, once again, probably my final break of the night, and then we're VOD reviewing game number 5 of the series and closing things up with some questions and stuff. So thank you very much for joining me for my game number 4 VOD review. We'll be back with the final game of TSM versus C9 very shortly.